Hello, everybody. I am Sean Fitzgerald, your host on Birds with Words, the author of the Alone Together series. If you're watching this live, thank you so much. This is our first live episode of Birds with Words. If you're catching this on the replay, thank you so much. And if this is your first time, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Every little amount really helps, especially when we're trying to support these wonderful writers out there. Now, just before I bring on our lovely guest for the evening, I do have some housekeeping things I just want to go over with everybody. First being is this will be considered my December podcast. Now, for those of you who are waiting for my December podcast from my newsletter, I decided that this opportunity was just far too important. I think that this is going to be a lot better for the writing community in general, and I can do my Q&A anytime I want. That being said, some of you will remember I said I was going to do a World War II blog on my grandfather. That is currently live on my website. So if you're interested in history, please go ahead and go into that link and take a look at that. I will absolutely appreciate that. I'd love to hear any stories you have from your family members. Even if they're not from World War II, you probably have a relative from that time period. And we're losing that generation, and I would love to hear that and make sure it's recorded someplace for you. Now, without further ado, I do have our lovely guest on with us. Please help me welcome L.N. Holmes.
Hello.
Leah, I've been looking forward to this since you and I talked about this. I'm very excited. Now, for everybody's listening, I've already read your newest novel. I had the opportunity to do it as an advanced reader. With that being said, I know a bunch about you because I've been doing this research and I've been going into stalker mode. But why don't you take a second and introduce yourself? Where can we find your information? Where can we get your books?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Sean. I am really excited to be here. It was so nice of you to do the first live show with me, of all people. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on. I really liked your interview with Sean and the other Sean, as we like to joke around and say. Yeah, some of the other writers you've interviewed, really cool stuff. So I am Ellen Holmes. I'm the author of Space Collisions and The Floating Castle. I'm also the founder of the Small Spec Book Awards. And you can find my latest novel in 4 separate independent bookstores. One is coming to the 4th one. But you can find Space Collisions in all of those stores except the last one. So the Crafty Bookstore, which Sean's in there too, you can find all his books in there as well. So that's a great place. I love them. They do so much for their authors, but they're also really good to their readers. So check them out. Amethyst and Ink Books, and that's in Lawton. So they're really cool. Just opened. This has been Lydia's dream. So if you support them, you're doing a lot of good. And then the Cozy Book Nook in Dayton, which I know some of the DVS crew, at least one I know for sure, Blake Myers. He's in the Cozy Book Nook too, so you can check out DVS people too as well. If you don't know what DVS is, I should probably let Sean say this. Oh, you should say this.
They're a bunch of nobodies. I don't know what you're talking about. No, DVS is the Dark Veil Society. They are a conglomerate of horror authors. They're all wonderful people.
Yes.
So, Leanne, we have a bunch of friends out here. It looks like this might be a family member, maybe just a coincidence, but I mean, we got
That's my mom.
There we go. Okay, we got mommy in the house. Okay. We got SMC. I believe that's Faith. Thank you so much for joining us, Faith. We got the big and mighty fantasy writer himself, Tim. Whitedale, thank you so much. He says, "Where's the cockatoos?" I'm not. Tell me about the cockatoos.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Okay. We got Molly. We got another horror. Look, we're gonna fill this up with horror authors today. That's what's gonna happen today. Oh, hey, we got Jen. Oh, I'm sorry. He goes by Yan. Every time I see your name, man, I put the hard J in there. I feel like Ron Burgundy. It might be a soft yawning. Yeah, no, yeah, we got all the DVS people. Hey, Jose, my brother. Jose and I might have a special announcement coming sometime next year, but we'll hold on to that one.
Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, yeah, Jose is an awesome dude. I hope we can work it out. And we got Brittany out there. All right, thank you guys so much. So, obviously, the big topic today is going to be your upcoming novel, but I can't just jump right into that. We have to do a little bit of foreplay with this. So, got the big question for you. Just come out. If you could have dinner with just any historical person, and I'm not going to let you say Jesus, so any historical person, who would it be?
Okay. Let's see. Any historical person. Oh man, that's a tough one. Maybe one of my ancestors, just because I don't know as much as I would like to about my family history. And I thought it was cool that you were talking about, your grandfather in World War II and stuff like that. So yeah, but I don't know a whole lot about my ancestors from like Ireland or England or Germany or, I think Scotland's in there. But yeah, I don't, yeah, maybe someone in my ancestry line, but I don't know who I would pick because I don't know what their names would be or where they'd come from. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of not a non-answer, but
It's an answer. It's all right. And for anybody who doesn't know, the reason why I limited her and said you can't do Jesus, she got asked this before, and I wasn't going to let her cop out and use the same one as previously. So she had to pick somebody different because it's my show. So
okay.
I also stole your answer when I was trying to do it with somebody else, and I was like, now I feel bad because she beat me to it. So obviously, I'm a horror author. We got a bunch of horror authors out there. And this is my question, the one that I've been asking people. So it happens. It hits the fan. The zombies are coming. Are you surviving?
Probably not.
What?
No, the only way that I would survive is if I was able to get with like my extended family, because I have I have a lot of veterans in my family, and my sister's a nurse, and yeah, and a lot of my family has gone through like survival training whether they wanted to or not. So I feel like I would be okay. Like my husband would definitely protect me, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I tried to do judo and jiu-jitsu for a while, and then my doctor was like, no more high impact sports for you. And I was like, crud. So because I get thrown around a lot, so
Yeah, well, to be fair, I don't think you want to get that close to most zombies, depending on the type of zombies we're talking about. I don't want to wrestle with them, but yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, or could you imagine like going do a hold and like the skin just comes off the arm?
The arm bar doesn't really help in that situation.
Your poor mom's listening to this and goes, I'm going to just close out of this one interview. You tell me how it was, sweetie. I'm sure you did fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mom. We're going to talk about horror stuff. I love you.
All right. So I do have a bunch of, more get to know you, but I mean, we got the big novel coming out, and let's build up to where you are with the Floating Castle. First, this is not your first writing. And I know that you've written sci-fi before. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that your other novel is a sci-fi novel. With that being said, why did you go from writing sci-fi to writing fantasy?
Yeah, so it's funny. My first novel, or I'm sorry, it's not even a novel. It's a small collection, very small collection of short stories. And the first one is actually magical realism, and the other two are literary fiction. And it's called Space Collisions because it deals with actual people, like, so it's metaphorically and it's literally, right? The first story is about two continents that are going to collide, like the African and the North American continent. They're moving. Imagine like a reverse Pangea, and they're going to collide, right? And so there's this catastrophic event that's looming, and everyone's panicking and freaking out, and you are in the head of one man who decides to stay on the shore as the other continent comes. The other two are flash fiction pieces, and they're about intimacy, but also about how we can either choose to be close to each other or far apart. And yeah, so what happens like when we collide, and what happens, kind of more metaphorically. So those, I like literary fiction, but genre fiction, science fiction, specifically fantasy, horror, that's my bread and butter. That's where I live. I love speculative fiction. So yeah, I wanted to publish this because I just like those stories, and a couple of them you can't find now anywhere. They're hard to access, so I wanted to make it easy for people to access.
Okay.
Now, why I moved to fantasy? Because I love it, and I've always wanted to write a fantasy novel. And I tend to lean towards darker stuff, so it ended up being dark fantasy instead of, Lord of the Rings. So, I mean, Lord of the Rings can get dark at times too.
It has its moments. It definitely has its moments. Did you find the transition difficult, or did you find one harder than the other?
I think literary fiction was actually harder for me, just because it feels confining in a way that genre fiction doesn't. Genre fiction is like, you can do whatever you want with your imagination, right? And unless you're trying to pitch to a specific group, it's almost limitless to me. Whereas literary fiction is like, it's very confined to like this idea of realism in a sense, but fictionalized. So it was harder for me to write, but it was also what I was taught the most in school, right? Because yeah, everybody kind of leans away from genre fiction, which is so sad,
Yeah.
because it's awesome. And I had many writers in the MFA that I was in who were writing amazing stuff that was genre, romance, crime fiction, horror. I mean, just really cool stuff. And it wasn't treated the same as the other stuff, which was really sad, because I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is beautiful, or gut wrenching, or like, why aren't we, as happy about this as we are like the literary fiction stuff? So yeah. Anyway, so now that I'm not as influenced by the MFA anymore, I've kind of branched out on my own, and I'm taking more risks. And genre fiction is what I love. So
Okay. That's fair. I agree with you, especially when it comes to just general education, trying to get young adults to read.
yeah.
I mean, I can tell you the ones that I enjoyed the most off the top of my head, and only one of them falls in literary fiction. The rest were genre fiction. They were only put on there because the author's name. It's like Out of the Silent Planet was one that I remember, and it stuck with me. I read Frankenstein in, and I want to say it was high school. And that one stuck with me, and several others of that area. I think Out of the Silent Planet in particular got me interested in sci-fi as literature, not just in movies and various things. So I fully understood where you're coming from on that. So let's talk about then, you transitioned, you go into fantasy. Now, your book, The Floating Castle, there's a lot of ways to name a book. So I'm not going to ruin it, but why don't you tell the audience why it's called The Floating Castle?
Yeah, I mean, titles are kind of hard, because you're trying to like sum up your entire book in like a phrase or a word or a couple of words. So I was like, well, the whole book kind of centers around the setting in a sense, because it's either looming over here and they're going to end up there, or they're already there and they're already in a sense trapped. And so the floating castle is kind of like, it's like that. I want it. Okay, so I believe it's Thomas Hardy's book, right? The Heath. I hope I'm getting this right, but it's like the Heath is like this own character, and it's a setting, but it's got this like personality, and it affects the characters, and it's got its own kind of like dread and things that happen, right? So the floating castle was kind of like that in a sense to me. it was the main kind of thing in the book that brought these characters together. And yeah, and then they had to figure out how to get away from it if they can. So
Yes, you very much wrote the actual castle as a character itself, and the closest I can come. Now, I'm not a big fantasy reader. I've read a couple,
yeah,
but I'm going to compare it to something that I relate to a little bit more. Is the way the hotel was written in The Shining. So everybody talks about Stephen King and how the hotel by itself is a character that interacts with the rest of the cast written, and I very much picked that up when going through the earlier reads. So we got that down. We know why you named it that way. This is Sean's interpretation of it. So I picked up that there was a lot of Eurocentric elements, but I mean, it's not just a Eurocentric fantasy. It is heavily based on a lot of Asian cultures. So I need to ask, how much research did you put into putting together the floating castle?
a lot. I checked out a lot of books on specifically the Song Dynasty from my local libraries. Song Dynasty history, technology. Yeah, definitely. And also like Filipino culture and the interactions between China and the Philippines. And I'm not talking about recent history. I'm talking about, more. I mean, the Song Dynasty, I think, even predates medieval history in the West. But I was looking into medieval, like Filipino history and the early conflict between China and the Philippines. So like with the characters, with the setting details, with the culture, a lot of the stuff that I try to kind of be careful about with like language, all of that was researched, and it took me quite a while to get through all those books and to really think about this. I was also trying to read some fiction that kind of was in the same vein. And I spent less time there because I didn't want to emulate it necessarily. I just wanted to see how they did the certain things. And so I mostly spent time with the history itself. Now, the Song Dynasty is earlier than medieval England. So you're going to have, there's almost like a time difference there. But again, these are more like inspirations than they are exact translations. So they're not meant to be like replicas, but they are somewhat influenced by these historical details. Yeah. So the Song Dynasty was pretty far advanced as far as technology. They had like a printing press before the West, and they had gunpowder before the West, and all this kind of stuff that made it hard for me to line everything up as far as like time periods. So I kind of had to advance the West a little bit in my book. But even then they're still behind, the other country. So
and the reason why I had to write this question was there was a moment, I think it was in chapter 2, that I completely stopped what I was doing reading because I wanted to research why you put that in there. It was the porcelain pillow.
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole of learning about porcelain pillows, and I spent I read like 2 research articles and spent 3 hours reading these research articles on like excavations of porcelain pillows from China. I didn't know that was a thing. So now I know that porcelain pillows were in China. And they look weird. It's not like when I found pictures of them, it's not at all what I thought a porcelain pillow would look like. So mind blown on that.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to this, and I would like to know a little bit more about it because China has a chaotic history, at least if you compare it to Europe at all. Was there a conflict in particular that you based your conflict in the floating castle on in Chinese history?
No. No, I would say now there is like a myth that Li Ling, there's a myth that kind of inspired me. There were there was like a Chinese mythical princess kind of in a sense that like trained soldiers and like led soldiers. But again, that was kind of like an inspiration. It's not a direct translation. So um and that's why I didn't name her after that Chinese mythical princess, because then it wouldn't do the myth justice, and I'm making something new. So um but yeah, not as far as like actual historical conflict, other than maybe a little bit with the Philippines. And so there's a island in my book called Nanahi, and they are right below where Li Ling is from, which is this huge country, and they annexed this small island country, and so when they did that, they obviously created this conflict, right? So that is somewhat inspired by historical research, but and actually I deal with that more in book two. Um, but as far as like the East-West conflict that happens in my book, not really. That yeah.
Okay, that's fair. And the family dynamics, the royalty and so forth, how much of that is based off any real Chinese research that you've done? How in depth did you base their relationships on historical ones?
Yeah, so I was looking up, you know, gender roles and class, and especially to do with like the emperor's palace and his wives, and the polygamy and the kind of the conflicts that arose from all the siblings that came out of the polygamy, and then the class hierarchy of like the wives to the emperor, and why some were given higher esteem than others. And there was obviously the empress, and then there was all the kind of concubines underneath. And so I did a lot of research on that, because not only for like names and stuff, but also just like what that would look like. And you would be surprised how little there is, especially in English, um, history there on just women in general. But like especially like these women who are kind of cloistered and isolated from society, because the emperor wanted them to be with him, and he was isolated from society. So and the kids too, really. I mean, the kids were kind of stuck in the palace. So and then there's like, so in the book you have what they call the palaces, the individual palaces, and then you have the palace complex, which is the overall big giant area with all the little palaces inside. And so a lot of the palaces are devoted to the concubines and the wives, and the children, and then of course you have others which you'll see in later books. But yeah, there was a lot of research on that, actually. I took a lot of hours looking up all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel for you. I attempted a fantasy prior to this, and I've mentioned it in other ones, and I put it on the back burner for a very long time because I didn't realize how much research it was going to require.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just not ready for that. So, all the fantasy writers, you guys have it. Kudos to you guys. So you've mentioned this a couple times in your talking. I mean, obviously, if you haven't heard of the Floating Castle, it's a very female-centered cast now, and that's intentional. I know that for a fact. But this question gets asked to male authors all the time, and I feel like it's unfair not to reverse it and ask our female authors as well. Do you find it difficult to write male characters?
Yes. I mean, definitely. I think Elias is such an extreme example of like one type of guy. Like the type of guy that doesn't quite get it, right? And he feels entitled, and he feels yeah, like people owe him something, right? And so, but he was hard to write, and he was hard not to make into a total clown, and into like this cartoon villain. I struggled with that a lot. His dad was a little easier, because how do I explain that? He just, I don't know. He felt like, I guess because I'm a parent now, he felt like the guy that's trying to do his best and doing it wrong, and doing it really, really wrong. um, so, so I could relate a little bit more to him than I could Elias. Elias is so different from me in the way I think. It was really hard. And yeah, in general, I think male characters are harder for me to write. And that's a lot to do with the fact that I was surrounded by women growing up. And yeah, I have a lot of women friends, I guess. And most of the guys in my life have been really nice, really kind, really sweet, but I've definitely dealt with some villains in my life too. And so I kind of draw from those, not all of those moments, because some of those I'd rather just not revisit ever, but some of those moments where I've had like conflict with another man, that helped me a little bit with Elias. But yeah, it is harder. I think it's harder.
Okay.
I always kind of wonder, like, sometimes, like, because I tried to create, like, Elias is so extreme. I tried to create balances throughout the book. You have like Tyndale, who's much kinder and kind of like a revolutionary. You have Gene, who's like this guy who just kind of like grunts, but he has a heart of gold. And so you have different characters, and actually Tyndale's going to get more spotlight in the second book. And so there's, and those are just two examples, but there are quite the spectrum in the book of different male characters. So yeah.
And again, I think that male authors get asked that all the time, and maybe it's a fair assessment, maybe it's not a fair assessment. Have you ever heard R.R. Martin's response to why he writes female characters the way he does, though?
No, I have not. I would be curious about that, though.
He had a pretty great response. They asked him, like, how do you write female characters so well? He goes, well, I always just imagine them as people like you and I. And I was like, oh my God. To a point, you're like, that's such a simple response. But if you break it down, it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's just what's their motivation, right? And once you figure out your character's motivation, it doesn't really matter what gender you put them as. And I think that's where we get hung up, because, if I try and write a female character and I'm worried about the voice of that character, if I just remember what their motivation is, it doesn't matter what their gender is at that point. But you get hung up on it when you're in your head about it. It's weird.
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I feel like, but you're right. I mean, we're all complex creatures. We all do things that don't make sense sometimes, and even with Elias, even though he's so extreme, right? He's definitely the villain in the book. He's definitely the antagonist, the main one. He also has moments where you're like, oh gosh, what happened? Like, I see what happened to you and why you're this way, right? Like, so you can have a moment of just stopping, and even though you might not stop hating him, right? You can see like he's human, and that he's dealt with his own hardships and things that might make you pause and think about him a little deeper. So yeah, I think it's important to just make them human, make them complex, make their motivations realistic. And it's really hard, but yeah, that's part of the challenge, right?
So I have to ask, because what you just said, and if you want to say you don't want to answer this because I'm prying into like the future of the series, are you going to cast more grayness in your antagonists so that it's not quite a I don't want to say that your characters are black and white on good and evil, but that there's more moral ambiguity between who's right and who's wrong.
Oh yeah. I feel like Elias will be extreme no matter what, but I feel like, you know, I am definitely trying to create this idea of him of like who he is as like he's not the most secure individual. So I'm trying to play that up a little bit. I'm trying to play up like how he's kind of alone and how um he was villainized kind of early, and so he stepped into the role instead of shrinking away from it and hiding away from society. He stepped into the role and took it on, and it's like, all right, you want to make me a monster, I'll be your monster. And so I try to be I try to create someone that's at least interesting in a way. And he won't be the same throughout the whole series. So you will definitely see his extreme measures, but he won't be the same because things will happen to him. So sorry, that's vague, but but yeah, the other characters, for example, in the second book, Kalimo, who is Velena's sister, you will see her become even more extreme than she is now. And you're going to dive deeper into her personal like beef with her family, and yeah. And I can't say too much because you have to kind of read the book to understand, but yeah, the characters, my goal is to always create characters that even though they are intense and bold, a lot of them are really bold, they have this kind of underlayer that drives their motivations and drives their goals. And even with Li Ling, who's probably the most obvious one, she is so driven by this like desire to be the favorite, child, the favorite girl child of the emperor, and to not lose that spot. And it's not even, she doesn't realize that it's not love. It's not love. And it's not just, she doesn't realize it's not love from her father. It's also not love toward her father, because she is after this position. She's not after like his actual care and love for her as a person. It's ambition, and she doesn't even recognize it. And so throughout the book, she starts to come into that fact that it's more about ambition than love. And she has to kind of grapple with that, and then she has to continue to grapple with that throughout the series. And what does that mean for her, right? And what does she truly want? So yeah, I try to make them complex. I try to give you characters that you can hate and you can root for, and characters that you might do both. Like, you might root for them and you also might hate them. And you just don't know how to feel about them. So.
I fully understand that. So all these questions were leading to a very open-ended but particular question. Okay. So we asked about research. I asked about research. I say we, but everybody's on here. We're all asking you these questions. So I asked you about the research. I asked you about the historical significance to it, and then how you developed your characters. Did you have to change any of your characters because what you learned about the cultures?
Yes. Yes, I did. Sometimes it was minor details. Sometimes it was like, oh, this isn't going to work at all. And I cut quite a few characters out of my book. Quite a few. I combined some of them together so that they became like one character. And it was mostly about roles, right? Like what role they were playing. So it wasn't like the cultural stuff, but it was more like like for example, Liling's taster, she tastes food for poison, right? She took on like the finance role. Like there was a finance guy at first who was like in charge of her coin purse, and then there was, I forget, there was another like handmaiden doing something. I forget now. It's been too many drafts. But but yeah, she's all like one person now, like so three characters into one. But yeah, there was definitely things I had to change due to culture. Can I think of any examples off the top of my head? No, but I definitely remember doing that at some point. Probably multiple times if I had to guess. Yeah.
Okay, so since you're going to have multiple books, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this in a lot of, I'm going to say more fantasy. There's a couple sci-fi books that do this. In your printed editions, maybe your electronic editions, are you going to include a breakdown of who all your characters are and how they're related to each faction?
So I think in the ARC that I sent you, I did have that. Like as far as like the main characters, I had like their relations and like the families. Um, but I took it out because I was like, I wasn't sure if it would be helpful or if it would just confuse people. And so my goal was to be as clear as possible with who was who. And then when I created a minor character, for example, that might show up in chapter 5 and then chapter 25 or whatever, I did my best to kind of make them memorable, especially if I named them and they actually had a role to play. I tried to make it as clear as possible for the reader. Now, there's always going to be people who get confused, especially with epic fantasy, because there's so much to keep track of. But you know, I I did my best as far as like being clear about who was who and what they were doing. I've heard some people say that they don't like the lists of characters at the beginning of books. Which I understand. I mean, I feel like that's kind of a taste thing. It's kind of a if you want to do it type of thing. For me, it was getting a little too wild because because you know they're explaining the family dynamics was easier actually in the fiction than writing it down and summarizing it. So yeah, I probably won't include something like that because I'm not sure how helpful it would be.
Okay.
But,
I would say that this is not telling you to do it one way or another. Just what I've seen, because I read the entire Song of Fire and Ice from R.R. Martin.
mm-hmm.
He has one of them, and it has all the chapters of all the different houses in there. And I really appreciate it. I spent a long time just looking at it. I had nothing to do, like I wasn't trying to relate it to the story at all. I just went back and I appreciate that part of fantasy, and I feel like it's a dying art for some reason. And a lot of authors, putting the maps in there and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's complex for you guys, but I think that's one of the things that just like makes you guys a little bit cooler than other authors, is being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally ruling it out. I like the idea of houses because, it's, I don't know. I feel like part of it is like, I wish I could have more art for my book, because then if I had like a visual, it might be easier. But I feel like if I just put a whole bunch of text on the page and it's just like, and this guy is related to this guy and this guy is related to this guy, I might bore the crap out of everybody. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, but maybe in the future. And yeah, we'll see.
As long as you don't go the Dune route and create an entire dictionary for vocabulary, I think we're good. So.
Yeah, that would be a bit much.
Yeah, don't go that route. I love Dune, but man, he literally created a whole nother language. I was like, that's too much. That's too much.
Yeah.
So okay, every fantasy author is guilty of this, and I'm going to ask you this right now, just to give everybody kind of an idea. If they don't know who you are, they haven't read your book, never heard of you before, compare yourself to 2 existing works, and you're not allowed to use Tolkien.
Yeah. This one's hard for me. So I think the closest examples, and they're really not close in some aspects, okay? So keep that in mind. But the closest examples I could find was the Priory of the Orange Tree and the Women's War. However, there's no romance in my book. So that's a big thing that's not the same. there's definitely the East-West conflict that's in the Priory of the Orange Tree. There's definitely the kind of terrifying dragons. I wouldn't say they're maybe as big, as the Priory of the Orange Tree dragons, but they are big and they're terrifying. Um, yeah, the women's more is more about like the family dynamics and like figuring out this magic that is happening. And I compare it sometimes to Game of Thrones and The Witcher, and here's why. Game of Thrones has dragons, obviously, and then there is that kind of political intrigue and conflict going on. With The Witcher, it's not so much about the type of monsters, because The Witcher has very specific types of monsters based off of a specific culture. It's more about the fact that there is these terrifying monsters in the world. There's these fiery women that we see in The Witcher, and there's also there's not like a prophecy thing going on. There's definitely nothing like that. But there is like the sinister kind of magic element, and stuff that's the magic in the magic in The Witcher is kind of morally gray, right? So you get that in the Floating Castle. It's definitely it's I don't know that it's even morally gray. I think it's pretty dark and sinister. I mean, so my one of my friends compared it. I don't know if any of you play Dragon Age, but one of my friends compared it to blood magic, and I was like, yes, that's very close to what it is. So, yeah, yep.
I definitely saw the. I don't want to say it's influence, but I saw a comparison or a similarity to the political espionage and intrigues that are going on to what Martin did in Game of Thrones. So I appreciate that, because that's one of the aspects I enjoyed in his writing. And for anybody who's listening, when Leanne says that it doesn't have romance, there's obviously romantic relationships that are involved in writing. It's just not a focus of it. So anybody who's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And that's something I really appreciated about reading your story was I feel like there's a flood of what do they call it? Romantasy now? Fantasy mixed with, yeah. I was really happy that when you sent it to me, I was like, oh, thank God, it's not that. So I was like, nothing against it, just not my cup of tea. So I appreciated it. So anybody out there, don't worry, it's not that. So we got that out of the way. So let's talk about your technique. So we got the story. We got a little bit about who you are. Do you use, and in particular to Floating Castle, do you use any of your personal memories or experiences to shape the characters?
Yes, I kind of joke around that a lot of my my women are based off of people in my family, but they're like a mashup, right, of women, and there's definitely their own elements there, like so it's not all, again, a direct translation, but yeah, definitely some influences from my family, and yeah, even my friends too, like for sure. Trying to think, probably no other. Well, Emmeline is definitely has a little bit of me in her, for sure. Yeah, definitely, because I felt like, I never, I don't know, Emmeline has that fighting spirit that I kind of have. And now she's a way better fighter than I am. but her like doggedness, even though she's like, I have all these disadvantages, but I'm still gonna try, and I'm still gonna do it, and I'm still gonna find a way. I can relate to that a lot. So yeah, I feel like maybe she's a little bit like me, but she's also kind of based off of my foster children as well, that I had for a while, that lived with us for a while. So and nothing, again, nothing direct, but definitely some kind of like, there's just influences there from like how they inspired me, how they fought through a lot of really hard stuff and kept going, and how things weren't fair for them, like, at all, and they still were trying, and that really I thought that was amazing. And also, like, at the same time, it sucked. You know, it sucked that they went through all that stuff. And yeah, so I kind of, Emmeline's a little bit based off of them, just a little bit. So,
Do you mind if I ask, because you said that you fostered them for a while, are they old enough that they'll remember you and experiences with you?
some of them, yes. Some of them are kind of iffy because they were pretty young. Not babies, but like toddler age. So maybe we had sibling sets, so the older siblings will probably remember everything. I would imagine, but the younger ones probably not. So
Oh,
they were great kids, though. I mean, it was tough. It was tough for them, and we had our first placement right when COVID hit, so it was even tougher than it should have been. But yeah, they were amazing, and they just kept going, and it was, you know, I don't know, it was really hard for them. So
yeah. Well, you had a heart of gold for taking them in, and I'm not going to pry too far into it because I don't want to bring that on to you. But I did want to ask where I was going with that was, did you put anything in a floating castle that they'll be able to read and know that it was a little message to them? You don't have to share the moment if you did.
no, I didn't, because I didn't want it to be like, I didn't want it to be an invasion, you know, like I didn't want it to be something that they could say, this is exactly what I did, or exactly what I said, or exactly how I looked in this moment. I didn't want any of that. I just was inspired, you know, by who they are as individuals, and their fighting spirit. And yeah, so Emily, her situation is different than anything they all went through. And yeah, and part of that's to protect the kids. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So with that being said, then what was the most difficult scene for you to write? And it does,
mm,
and if it's a scene that wasn't in a floating castle, by all means, what was your most difficult scene you've ever written?
as far as technical ability, or as far as,
It's
oh,
completely
this,
however you want to take that question.
okay, as far as emotional damage, yeah, there was a scene where and I can't really talk about it in detail, but I'll talk about it vaguely, where a child dies. And I thought about ripping that out of the book. I had a really hard time with it. Way more than I thought I would, because I'm like, this is fiction. No one's actually hurt. No one's dying. You know, but after I wrote it, and I became a mom, I was just like, I don't know that I can actually publish this. And then I'm like, okay, this whole other character's arc is not going to make any sense if I don't do this. So that scene was really hard for me. um, as far as like technical ability, I think it's all hard, honestly. All of it's hard. Is there a scene that's not hard?
Hey, putting your words down for other people to read is difficult. So I feel you on that one. What is it on the technical side? What is there like one particular area that you, let's say, you enjoy the least? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, grammar.
Okay, I'll allow it. I'll allow it. I wish I could do that leaning back right now. I can't do it right now. Okay, I'll allow it. I'm not gonna make you go into that. Look, you have one of my stories that I'm unfortunate that I went forward with. So I feel you. I'm in the same boat with you. I got you.
Grammar's so hard. English grammar.
Everybody's like, but you speak the language, and everybody's like, I can write that, and then okay, write 150,000 words and get back to us. Let's see, do it one time, go.
Exactly. Yes, yes, exactly. And I could go very far into that. I won't. But there's a whole reason why a lot of us struggle with grammar, especially now. So, yeah. I mean, there's multiple reasons, but again, I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, grammar's tough. Yeah, and it messes up my flow sometimes. So it messes up my writing. So
Look, I'll embarrass myself here. I've never had to spell the word whittle before, like at all. And what I'm talking about is like when you take a stick and you whittle away with it with a knife.
right.
And I always thought it was Widdle. I've never had to spell it before. I wrote it down. It kept flagging me as wrong. It's Wittle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
But who writes whittle? So.
There's still words that I should not struggle with that I struggle with all the time, and I feel like what's the one? Oh, desperate. I always misspell desperate every single time, and I'm like, I know how to spell this. Why do I always misspell it? Ugh, it's so annoying.
Have you ever seen the movie Bruce Almighty?
No, but I've heard about it.
So in it, he spelled like every time he says beautiful, he spells it. It goes BEA, and then he goes beautiful. And I do that every time I spell beautiful now. And I say it to myself every time. So don't worry about it. We all have our oddities. We don't need to let people know unless you're on Birds with Words, and then you get embarrassed. So,
that is public.
Yeah. Then mom and dad's like, ooh, maybe we should talk with our daughter a little bit. Hey, mom and dad, I hope you're enjoying it. All right. Well, we are getting up close to the hour. I told you before this was going to burn through. So I have some rapid fire questions. And these questions, you can just answer them, or you can answer them and give us the justification on why. So first one, metal music or rap music?
Metal.
Okay. Horror or romance?
Horror.
Sci-fi or fantasy? Yeah.
Oh. Fantasy by like a smidgen.
Oh, just a smidgen. Okay. Ireland or Japan?
Oh. That's hard too. I would say Ireland just because I have ancestors from there and I really want to visit.
Okay. Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees?
Freddy.
Okay. The Alien Xenomorph or The Thing?
Alien.
Okay. That's the right answer for me. So, Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones?
Oh.
Everybody in the audience is going to judge you, by the way, for this one.
Yes, I know. I'm still going to go with Lord of the Rings. Everybody's going to be so like, wait a second.
Look, everybody has a preference, okay? And I don't think there was a wrong answer to that because there's parts of Lord of the Rings I enjoy and there's parts of Game of Thrones I enjoy and there's parts of both that I hate. So,
yeah, true.
It is what it is.
Yeah, straight up.
Oh, yeah. Somebody in there already fighting. Got them fighting for it. Breaking Bad or The Sopranos?
Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good pick. Now, you know where I lean on this, and this is probably the only question that I'm going to ask you here that actually has a right or wrong answer. And eggnog, yes or no?
I already know your answer. Because I was laughing over that video today. You know what's funny? I've never actually tried it.
What?
Yeah, I know. I haven't.
Mind blown.
I know. Maybe I will someday. I have not tried it.
Yeah, there it is. You got to come around to it. Now, I'll definitely say this. You got to get the right type because I've had terrible eggnog before. Just go ahead, pay the extra money, get a good brand, and I don't know if you go to Costco. Theirs is always good. If you get like really watered down stuff, it tastes terrible. Don't do that. Don't start with alcohol either. No, don't know if you drink, but it changes the taste. It is okay with alcohol, but if you have never tried eggnog, you have to. And look, we got a loser in the comment section. Look, we know where this is going. Oh man, everybody's this is
Mom's
the question.
Fancy.
Of all the questions, this is the one that lights up the chat. They're like, oh, it's okay. Only the hognogs know. Only the hognogs. Okay. So what's next for you? I mean, I guess book 2 for the Floating Castle, right?
Yeah, book 2. I've told other people that I have like these 2 horror ideas that are knocking around in my head, and they are trying so hard to take up space, and I'm just like, calm down, like let me finish this series, and then maybe I'll get to you. But I would love to actually write those novels. But I am committed to this series. I'm not going to leave my readers hanging.
That's great. We don't want an R.R. Martin moment going on.
Yeah.
Like 6 years later, and you're like, I'll get it.
Right.
So, do you not write multiple manuscripts at once? You're just one manuscript at a time?
I would say one novel at a time. But as far as like short stories and flash fiction, I definitely write those on the side while I'm writing a novel. So, yeah, I wrote a couple recently. Flash fiction is easier because you can just boom, 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 it's out there, it's done. So very short, doesn't take a lot of time. Short stories are a little harder. You have to take a few more days on that. And especially if you're going to revise them and try to put them out there somewhere, right? Like, even if it's just straight to readers, I don't like to put out an unfinished draft. So I definitely want to take some time and revise it. So that takes a little bit more time. So I kind of shy away from those a little bit more, unless there's something like really pressing that I need to do, which happens sometimes. But I refuse to do more than one novel at a time, because I feel very guilty if, I'm focusing on one versus the other. I definitely want to commit like laser hyper focus on one novel at a time.
Okay, understood. So when it comes to, is it going to be called the Floating Castle series, or are you going to name it something?
It's called the Dragon Gate series.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm a terrible interviewer. I didn't know that. Okay. Okay, so the Dragon Gate series, did you write them consecutively, or did you only do book 1, go all the way through it, get it published, and then start book 2? How did you work that flow?
So I was revising, and I was like getting it edited and stuff, the first book, as I was writing the second book. So I was moving on to the second book as the first one was getting ready for launch. So yeah. But I would say I didn't start the second book until pretty far into the process with the first. So, as far as getting it ready to put out there. Basically, I think actually when I started querying it, because I did go through the querying trenches first, I was working on book 2. So, which, that didn't work out. So, yeah, I would say, and part of it was like, when I say working on it, it was like I was taking notes, I was doing an outline, I was revising the outline, that type of stuff, and then started doing chapter by chapter by chapter. And actually, I've already moved around the order. So, but now I'm going to say I'm about, I'm more than a fourth of the way through. I want to say I'm close to a third of the way through the second book now. So,
gotcha. And are you comfortable talking about what your cadence is going to be for the series?
What? Your
cadence. So how, are we going to be expecting a book a year, or did you not want to commit to like saying that out loud yet?
I would say a book a year is fast. And usually when authors do that, they either have the whole series written ahead of time, or they're trad published. And because trad publishing, you've got editors, you've got marketers, you've got people who are going to work on all of that other stuff for you. Marketers, if you're lucky. But like the editing and the book production itself, that's taken care of by the publishing house, right? I have to do all that on my own. So it's a little more tricky for me as far as putting it out. And I tried my best to make it look as professional as possible. So I do my own cover design, I do my own formatting. The only thing I don't do is my own editing. So like I'll have an editor. Actually, I had 2 for the Floating Castle. Don't recommend 2. But but yeah, pretty much everything else I do myself. So as far as the writing, my goal I say my goal, but I'm not gonna like promise anything, okay? My goal is to be done with a second book in 6 months.
Okay, you guys heard her. She's gonna be done 6 months. Everybody, if 6 months rolls around, I want to see those gifts coming out with the whip and everything. So 6 months.
Now I'm gonna go hide.
We better see book 2 up on all the social medias. Well, look, I'll say that anybody who's not familiar with the work that goes into a indie author and everything that you mentioned on why it's so difficult, you do a phenomenal job staying on top. I see your posts quite often, which is unique. It's actually a very difficult thing to do. Like, anybody who's not in this are like, what are you talking about? Social media? I see everybody's posts all the time. When you're talking about thousands of people at any given time period, being able to stand on top of it. So whatever you're doing, I think you're doing a pretty good job on it. We are up on the hour here. Absolutely. We're up on the hour here, but I don't want to close this out without somebody being able to say some questions. So please, right now, before we start closing it out, if you have any questions for little Miss Leanne over here, please go ahead and ask and tell us, do you have the tenacity to survive in the floating castle?
Yeah, I know that there was somebody had asked me a question about if some of the minor characters were going to become major characters. And they're definitely okay. So Matilda, I have a short story up on my website, which you can access by subscribing to my blog. Free. You can turn off all the emails. But it's pretty easy. Anyway, Matilda is important to the floating castle, but she's very minor as far as a character. So I gave her own short story because I kind of liked her and I kind of wanted to give her some backstory. And she's also going to be important to book 2. And she's going to become like more major in book 2. So also some of the minor characters that you see in book 1 will show up again in book 2. Actually, quite a few of them. And they will. Oh yeah, for sure.
So I didn't mean to cut you off by putting that up there.
Oh dear.
You're fine. There we go. Yeah, the floating castle. But you were saying so some of the minor characters were going to become more important?
Yeah. So Tyndale's a good example of one, which you kind of meet Tyndale at the end of book 1. But he's going to be more important. Belena's sister is going to be more important. Another really important character that's kind of a mentor character to Emmeline is going to be more important. I mean, I definitely just don't introduce people, especially named characters, and then just kind of let them go into the ether, right? I try to make them more fleshed out, and especially because I get to write a series, I have that room to do that. So I always loved that when authors did that. They made the minor characters kind of important in some way, or they gave them an interesting story. I always liked that. So
that's one of my favorite parts of minor characters. And we got Molly over here saying that your cover is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you, Molly.
That actually reminds me of a question I wanted to ask. The silhouette, did you use somebody you knew for the silhouette, or did you get that someplace else?
That's actually just it was a free stock art image. And one of those images that I knew for sure was like royalty free and all that stuff. But yeah, I mainly just used, and that's why it's so kind of simple in look, is I used free stock art kind of images. And then I just kind of took them from different places and rearranged them. And I had so many covers that I did, just so many designs, and it's probably why I cried so much, but I'm not a graphic designer, so it was really hard for me. But I wanted to make it look professional as best I could, and I also wanted it to stand out. I wanted it to be like really bold, because the book is so intense and dark, and so the colors were an intentional choice, right? Yeah, I wanted you to kind of know what you were getting into when you stepped into the book. So.
And we got another one here. What kind of horror books are brewing? Apocalyptic, paranormal?
Yeah. So one's paranormal, and the other is hard to explain. It's kind of. I don't want to say anything yet because it's still kind of percolating in the brain there. But uh, okay. So I listened to the book podcast. No, this was from Strangers in Fiction. So Saffron Asteria, right? She has two separate podcasts, Booked and Strangers in Fiction. She mentioned something in Strangers in Fiction in one of her episodes that just immediately sparked an idea for me, and I was like, what if I did? And it also kind of stems from another, actually a graphic novel that I read, that I liked and enjoyed, but I was like, what if I did something different with an idea that's somewhat similar to this, but I made it horror. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm working on. Oh, thank you.
We got more love on the covers here. And it looks like we got one more question. One of my favorite scenes was the dragon, the Black Sea of Silk. Will there be more epic dragon scenes?
Oh, yeah. You know there's going to be more dragons. I love my dragons. There's definitely going to be more dragons. Actually, in the next place, my plan is to show the third type of dragon. There's 3 types of dragons in the floating castle. So my plan is to show the third type, and I'm not going to tell you how, and I'm not going to tell you when. You'll have to read the book.
Oh, Lord. Well, Leah, this has been awesome. I told you this hour flew by. So why don't you go ahead, anybody who's new out there, they don't know you, go ahead and tell us where we can find your works again and what works you have out there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. This was so fun. Yeah, as far as where you can find my stuff. Okay, so again, I'm the author of The Floating Castle and Space Collisions. Very short read, not so short read. But yeah, I write a lot of speculative fiction. This is my first kind of novel. This is my debut novel. And you can find it in 4 separate independent bookstores. If you go onto my website, you'll be able to see the links for 3 of them. The 4th one, I'm waiting for the delivery of the books from the printer to the actual store. So sorry, it's just holiday delays, right? It's driving me crazy, but they should be there in time for holiday shopping. Yeah, and then check out Crafty too, because Sean's there, and a lot of really cool authors like Molly are there. And yeah. If you like dark epic fantasy that is a little familiar and a little different, leans into a little bit of horror, yeah, then my book might be for you. Yeah, and if you like magical realism and literary fiction, then you should definitely check out Space Collisions, especially if you like The Ceiling by Kevin Brockmeyer. If you've ever read that story, it won this huge prize. I was blanking on the type of prize, but I was inspired by that story to write one of the stories in my collection, and it's different than that story, but it was the inspiration behind it. So, oh, thank you so much.
Got some last excitement going in there.
Yeah.
And Leanne, thank you once again. This has been an absolute pleasure. And you're always welcome to come back on to Birds with Words. And hey, you don't know, maybe one day you'll read one of your short stories or even a prologue on here. Give somebody a little bit of an opportunity to see what it's like. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're watching us on the replay, thank you so much. I have our links down below. You can go ahead and find both of our link trees down there. Give Leanne some love. She needs it. Add her, follow her, buy her wonderful books. Until next time, everybody, stay frosty.
Thank you.